In the era of the smartphone, the tablet, and the never-ending universe of content available online, there is always something to watch, especially for the youngest among us. In the past 20 years or so, the amount of time kids under 2 spend doing things like watching videos and playing games online has more than doubled, from less than an hour and a half in 1997 up to more than 3 hours a day. These days, it seems like not a week goes by without a news report or a nationwide study about the effects of all that screen time on young kids. But the field of data is hardly conclusive. One week, you might read that too much time in front of screens will have lasting consequences for your kids' development. The next, it's nothing to worry about. And for parents like me, without much, really any expertise in early education or cognitive development, it can be hard to wade through all the conflicting info. So today, I have brought in reinforcements. Joining me to help sort it all out are Anya Kamenetz, an education reporter for NPR and the author of The Art of Screen Time, How Your Family Can Balance Digital Media and Real Life, and Lisa Guernsey, director of the Learning Technologies Project and senior advisor to the Early and Elementary Education Policy Program at New America. She's also the co-author of Tap, Click, Read, Growing Readers in a World of Screens. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start with maybe an overly candid disclosure. The way that I deal with screen time with my 2 kids who are 9 and 13 is when I'm feeling stressed out and need a break, or when I have to cook, or when I have to make a call for work, I'm happy to have them hop on the iPhone or the Kindle or whatever. Then, if I'm feeling like a motivated dad, or I'm feeling grumpy, or I'm feeling bad about the state of the world, I'll, come downstairs or come in from the other room and say, you guys got to get off those. You've been, if their eyes are especially glassy, I'll tell them to get off. I'll maybe complain about how the older one doesn't read books anymore like she used to when she was a kid, and then it deteriorates from there. Mm-hmm. I know I'm doing many things wrong. Can you identify the particular things I'm doing wrong and tell me how to fix them?
So for my book, The Art of Screen Time, I surveyed over 500 parents, and you're very much in good company because convenience is a major strategy that parents use with regards to screen time. And you know why it doesn't work. It's because it's unclear to parents, it's unclear to the children exactly what it is that they're doing right or wrong. And it's just always much more helpful when we can have a structure in advance that we agree to. It could be something very clear where you say, okay, when I'm making dinner is when you can use the screens. But everyone needs to understand what the ground rules are. And that's really more of a parenting thing, honestly, than a technology thing, right?
That ground rule that you were talking about, is it good to have, would you suggest? And my sense from what I've read of your book is that you recognize different approaches work differently for different people. But is it smart to have a certain time every day that they can count on and to not have that be sort of floating? Because that's another thing I do wrong.
With the caveat, of course, that different kids are going to be different. Yep. I think it makes sense to think about the structure of your day as a whole. Kids need time to sleep. They need uninterrupted time with their families, time with their friends. They need time outdoors. They probably have homework in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. So how does it fit in given all those other priorities is really the issue. Some days it could be 30 minutes. Some days it could be 45 or 2 hours even if you're having a good time, or maybe they're sick or maybe there's travel. But, but having a schedule where you say checklist, are these things done, then screen time is fine.
Those are good ideas. All right, Lisa, what would you suggest that I and any parents who do things similarly and effectually maybe change up?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that parents often forget, and I was in this place too, when I wrote a book called Screen Time about my kids ages 1 and 3, I was so focused on the amount of time, I wasn't actually looking at what they were looking at on the screen. And then I looked at the research a little more closely, and instead of just focusing on time, look at the content on the screen, which is the first C, the context, another C, and the individual child's needs. So we call that the 3 C's. And that can help to guide a parent in making a good decision.
What do you mean by context? Content seems pretty self-evident, but what does context mean?
So context is a lot of what Anya was just describing, which makes a lot of sense. What is the context of this use of screen media in the child's day? But it also includes who's sitting next to my child. And, are they playing with their little brother? Are they having a great time? Are they by themselves? Is this right before bedtime when they really need to be kind of getting themselves kind of calmed down? Is this context that's related to schoolwork and a collaborative project that they might be doing with lots of other peers? those are contextual moments that you got to think about.
And you make the argument, tell me if I have this correct, that there is, in your newest book, that there is a reading crisis in America, that people do not read as well as they should, and that electronic media actually can help solve that, right? Which seems a little counterintuitive. Can you just briefly outline that?
Yes, and I mean, we looked at this because we were worried that, and this was with Michael Levine in this book, and we were worried that there were so many distractions that children were not having moments to learn how to read. So what can we do using technology to harness it for good? And what do we need to know about the way technology might be impeding a child's learning to read, their early literacy skills, their language development? One of the key takeaways is the importance of conversation and just a rich dialogue about things happening in the world. And children need that, and that will set them up to be strong readers. And screen media can actually spur that and be a trigger for fun conversation, but it could also impede it. And again, you got to go to the content. What are they looking at on the screen?
You, I believe, early on in your book, bring up these sort of two competing analogies when it comes to talking about this stuff. In one, screen time is a danger akin to smoking. No amount of it is good. You want to have as little as possible, maybe none at all. And in the other, it's akin to food, where some is okay, some can even be nourishing, but it can also be bad for you if not consumed properly. Did you, in the course of writing your book, decide that one of these holds truer than the other?
Well, that's a great question, and I really did gravitate towards the food analogy more and more, even as I hear more and more rhetoric around the cigarette analogy. So for me, I adopted a version of Michael Pollan's food rules, which is enjoy screens, not too much, and mostly together. And that idea being that, yes, we want to have balance. Just as with mealtimes, that balance really comes best in the context of a family that's sharing and creating rituals and ideas around screen time that we do it. But I also want to point out that screens are fun and they're really enjoyable. They're very engaging and a preferred activity for a lot of kids. And letting our kids do it and understand why they love it is an important way into our kids' lives. I think one of the biggest barriers that I see to effective parenting around screens is that parents think their whole job is to say no.
Again, that cuts close to the bone here. Yep.
But you can really start a conversation with your kids and get connected with your kids by finding out what is it you like about that video game. Why are you watching the show? Who is this character? What's going on? And learning more about their lives and actually talking to them about what's going on in the world through the lens of a show or a game.
I want to bring up, even though you're accentuating the positive, and I'm going to take this to heart, I do want to mention a couple numbers that we found sort of troubling numbers when those of us who put the show together were looking into it. One poll from Common Sense Media, it asked parents of teens between 12 and 18 whether their kids were addicted to their phones. 59% said yes. That's the parents reporting, so maybe not totally trustworthy narrators. The one that really freaked me out, maybe because I have a 13-year-old, is another Common Sense poll question asking teens whether they felt the need to respond to texts and other digital communications immediately, and 72% said yes. How do you, or how does one, push back against something like that? Because I have to say, as someone who is in his 40s, I'm very happy that this was not a conduit to the world when I was 15 years old, because I think it would have driven me crazy. So how do you rein that in?
Yeah, and I've got, mine are teenagers now, so I'm hearing, this is very real to me as well. Some of it goes back to what are they actually doing when they're having these conversations, and so that responding to a text, it might be because something really dramatic happened in their friend group, and it is really important for them to make sure that they're not seen as being, ignoring someone or something else. As a mom, I've found it necessary to, without prying, and I don't read every text, but when I see something really kind of agitating happening and they really have to respond, to just ask gently, so is something going on? Do you need to kind of finish that conversation? Because we need you to come to the dinner table. But recognize that there's something important going on in their life, and then try to shift them to being involved in real life as well.
That sounds like a great strategy, and you're right there in the trenches. My oldest kid is 8, so I haven't gotten there yet. But I do know from the research that we need to respect that digital media is fulfilling very deep developmental needs in teenagers. For girls, it can be status, it can be peer, effects, and for boys, obviously, the need to feel powerful and control with video games, adventure, a sense of risk. And our teens are living very circumscribed lives in a lot of ways compared to previous generations. They're not working, they're not driving, and they're not engaging in risky behaviors. And so the online world is it's looming larger for them. as a developmental space.
Right. Which is completely terrifying when you think of the range of experiences that are accessible online.
Well, the media has done a great job of freaking parents out about this. There's another recent poll that came out that showed that parents are more concerned that about their kids' overuse of technology than about sex, about drugs, about gangs. But the fact is that parents use their screens more
totally.
than kids do.
Totally.
Right? Even teenagers.
And I've had many times where I've hollered about still being on the phone all right, closing question for you. I think we've got like 45 seconds left. There was a video which I believe went viral a couple years ago. It was of a baby looking at an iPhone, and we have a little bit of it right here. Baby's looking at an iPhone. The father puts his finger out over the iPhone, and the kid just repeatedly swats his hand away. She's really into the look. She's assertive, to her credit, but she does not want him getting in the way. Is there a certain age at which kids should not even be touching these? Does it make sense to wait totally until, say, first birthday or second birthday? And briefly, yes or no?
We know that by 18 months there are some things they might be understanding on the screen, but parents need to be with their kids when they're that young and they're using the pictures.
You got the last word. I'm sorry, we got to wrap it up. And we haven't talked about a ton of stuff. Anya Kamenetz, Lisa Guernsey, thank you both. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Tap, Click, Read, Growing Readers in a World of Screens is Lisa's book. The Art of Screen Time, How Your Family Can Balance Digital Media and Real Life is Anya's.